Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the World Championship Series Challenger Group C. My name is Fear Dragon, and we are going to be moving into our next match. I'm joined here on my left, or to your right, by Zombie Grub. What's up?
Not much. What's up with you?
You know, not a whole lot. Watching some StarCraft.
Oh, okay.
Got to see some Hive-Tech units. By Hive-Tech units, I mean literally 2 Ultralists, and that was it. And then just a lot of Lings and Banes.
Weird.
That was strange.
You know, we should be like twirling our hair right now.
I don't have hair long enough for that.
I think if you really tried. Just do this one.
No, I tried. Not long enough. So our next match is going to be a Protoss versus Terran, and this should be a pretty interesting one because I know uThermal in a lot of ways, oftentimes at times where I think Terran is not doing well, uThermal tends to throw out like kind of weird-ish things, which always gets me excited about a uThermal match. And I know that lately, at least according to like his competitive match history, he has been struggling a little bit versus a lot of the better Protoss players out there. So he'll beat a lot of the, you know, lower rated Protoss players when he faces off versus like, you know, anyone beyond like Gerald or something. If he faces off versus like Gung Fu Banda or Petit Drogo or something, he has been losing those matches.
I was wondering where you're setting that bar for good Protoss. And I'm like, is this like shade being thrown at DnS
like,
or what?
Peely.
Yeah, so I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
uThermal is kind of an interesting Terran just to talk about in general. DnS we'll of course also get to, but I think uThermal does kind of like, I mean, all eyes are on him for being that European Terran who actually has had results, and he's also just, you know, kind of vocal. So we usually get to see his opinion about things as well. Kind of memey a little bit too.
Very memey.
A little bit.
Well, we're going to be starting down here, ladies and gentlemen, in game number 1 on Kairos Junction. Top of the red, Terran player from Team Liquid. He is uThermal. A very thoughtful guy, always considering other people's opinions. That's why he's called uThermal, not me thermal.
Well, really, he's called Liquid Thermi, so... Your thing didn't work! In the top left, as the blue Protoss, he is DnS.
Well, if you look at our preview screen instead of the in-game screen, you'll see that we label him uThermal.
Whatever
not
doesn't
Liquid
work
Thermi.
with your pond, man. That's what I'm going to go with. So we do have a forward wall off here from DnS. This will provide that faster depth across the map, should he choose to do so. But it also will provide maybe some protection against Hellion builds. Also, if he's going to block off like he is here, it's going to provide even like less opportunities for that Reaper to get in and see what's going on. So it's going to like generally be annoying. And he is going to go for that Zealot. Did he actually scout? No, he hasn't. It's very rare to see a Protoss not probe Scout a Terran.
Yeah, I guess the idea here is that either DnS is just trying to hard predict what uThermal's doing, or he's going to go across the map with the Zealot and Stalker and just try and put some pressure on without actually scouting at all. So the Zealot itself will go for scouting.
Yeah, which... I mean, it's okay, it's fine. It's going to try and circumvent the Reaper here and be a big surprise. It just feels that that probe, if it adds even the slightest bit of delay, if it adds even the slightest bit of tilting factor, because flipping probes, right?
Yeah.
That seems to almost always be worth it, but DnS doesn't go for it. He is going to go for the Zealot and then Chrono out the Adept as well, so a bit of aggression for uThermal to handle. uThermal is looking for this as well as for any probe that might have stuck somewhere else. He is going to find the Zealot in a good time in advance, right? And he's going to be able to take that out, and I think he'll be all right.
I mean, I think the kind of nice thing here is that versus a probe, well, of course, oh, well, never mind. I was going to say the Zealot can guarantee at least some damage on this SCV, or at least a delay on the command center, which opens up the time for the Adept to get here. And now, Adept is actually going to be able to save the Zealot. The SCV is kind of off in no man's land. And guess what? There's a Stalker being rallied across the map, so that SCV is still going to be in some danger.
That's not a wall. That Adept was just let in.
Oh, yeah. You know, that barracks was a little bit further to the south because it was trying to build a reactor, and now the SCV on the low ground gets taken out. The Adept does get taken out by the Hellion, but this is already some really good damage here for DnS.
Okay, that could have gone worse, but I thought it was going to go better. It's kind of what's happening here. So the Hellion is surprisingly obnoxious to the Stalker. Obviously, it doesn't do a lot of damage, but it can chase the Stalker. So if the Stalker's busy with anything else, then you kind of guarantee that kill, as opposed to if it was just Marines. But yeah, I thought the Zealot was going to die straight up before reaching the SCV, or before the Adept came anyways. And then the Adept was supposed to not be let inside, but it kind of worked in uThermal's favor in a way.
Yeah.
As the Adept didn't pair up with the Stalker, it was all alone against the reinforcement line. And uThermal did not go super greedy and get like a tech lab on the factory. He's actually going into a Hellion drop now, so it's working out okay for him.
Okay. Well, first Observer is on its way out. We got a Warp Prism and 2 Stalkers out for DnS, and he is moving across the map. So, I mean, really showing a lot of just poking and prodding here from DnS. He wants to keep an eye on what uThermal's got at the front and force him to reveal everything. The question is it going to be totally and completely out of position for this? He is going to catch the medevac as it's moving across the map, and with a Warp Prism warping and a few more Stalkers, I think he's going to be able to get that medevac.
Oh, that was really unfortunate. Oh, well, he's going to get the Warp Prism, so that might, again, be something that turns around in uThermal's favor. The Hellions not doing a ton of damage, but they are doing some splash damage. Good attempt to split there from DnS, but uThermal is producing behind all of this, so the aggression is mostly stopped. And actually, uThermal, I really like this choice, just going across the map.
I love the emergency wall off, because remember, he just used his warp-ins to try and get those Stalkers out with the Warp Prism, so his warp gates are on cooldown for a few more seconds. By getting the wall off, he buys just 4 seconds of time that gives him the time to get the warp in and defend.
That was really nice of DnS. If DnS had gone back to chase with the Stalkers, that gives uThermal so much time to produce. This is absolutely no problem. But that said, the Hellions come back and still are enough to force the recall. What an action-packed game for the first 5 minutes here. I
just want to note the army composition right now for uThermal, because he's lost all of his Marines, consists of 7 Hellions and 1 Marauder at the 5.5-minute mark. Not a normal PvT, I would say.
No, not really. Although with the new trend being to go mech, and uThermal has done mech, I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's a little weird, but I think uThermal is running with the circumstances pretty well, and there is always that chance that the Hellions would have done damage either with that quick run by or with the build uThermal wanted to do, which was to drop in the main and attack on the natural.
So what do you think comes from the robotics bay that DnS is going for?
Colossus. He's actually been doing, I think, Colossus in, like, I don't want to say every one of his PvTs because I'm not that much of a stalker, but I have watched a couple of DnS and he has been going Colossus, so I do think that's what he's going to be going with maybe for the majority of this series as well. And uThermal might be on top of that, you know, studying his opponent.
Totally. All right, well, we do have Twilight Council being added on behind this. There is that Colossus, as you mentioned, coming out. Thermal Lance on the way as well, indicating that he wants to invest in more than just 2 Colossus, probably. Usually you want at least 3 or something. Also got that Warp Prism waiting around, waiting for the opportunity to move in. We're going to see if he finds it. He has that Observer right over uThermal's natural expansion, so he'll see as soon as there's an opportunity to move in, see when there's not a lot of units back at home. And he should also maybe be thinking, okay, I don't see all those Marines or the Hellions or anything over at the front. I think they're all probably out on the map. And he would be right if he assumed that.
There's a scout on the Colossus, which he was missing, right? He didn't actually get anything into the main or natural DnS. So that's nice. uThermal, I mean, despite holding on to that early aggression, the real problem, I suppose, with how this game went is that while his stim wasn't that delayed, he actually was pretty on point about starting that tech lab and starting stim. He did have to delay what usually is more barracks production, but he still has a decent push. DnS out on the map very aggressively wanted to meet this head on, but actually has lost track of it, so...
And this gets really dangerous, too, because now the Immortal Hardened Shields has been set off, and he's going to encounter some of this army in the center, but the siege chain's already sieged up. There's a double medevac drop on the far north side, and if you just take a look, that was DnS's entire army. I don't know how he's going to be able to split up this army very well.
He won't be able to. Now, it's kind of weird, because if there were, like, any Zealots, even maybe without charge, if they're coming in from any angle...
he just uses warp-ins. He can't warp in reactively anymore in the main.
Well,
he has more gateways.
Yeah, he does. I mean...
Oh my god, that Artos is piling. That's 5 gateways.
Does he recall half of his... Okay, so he has... There's the other warpings you were talking about. Charge is very close to finishing, but they are going to be coming in very awkwardly before that, as well as through a choke, so that is going to be a disaster in DnS's main base. But as I was going to point out, he could take on the army that
Yeah.
uThermal left behind. It was almost like a fake. Like, it almost was like, please go after the army while I attack the main. A gamble that worked out really well for uThermal, as long as it didn't take too much damage on the counter, which is exactly what DNS is looking to do.
Yep, third base finishes up just in the nick of time to lift off and get back up into the main base. He realizes how much damage he just did. uThermal is actually only sitting at 45 workers himself, so he did commit a lot to that attack. Doesn't even have that third command center as an orbital. But here we go, DNS is warping in a lot of zealots. He's moving back up north because maybe he caught wind that there was the drop still heading back in. Maybe he's looking for the drop or just deciding if he wants to actually commit to the stack. He is warping in some more. He's going for this.
This is going to be a very dangerous attack for uThermal to hold, because it's not a lot of Blink Stalkers guarding their Colossus against Vikings. It's tons of Zealots working against what is still a tank-based splash, and not that many tanks anyways.
Oh, and the drops don't even get a chance to go in. uThermal has just lost almost his entire army here. The siege tank on the high ground going to get taken out. uThermal finally goes in with the drops, but there's only about 11 Marines here. Can they really base trade versus an army this size?
No.
No, the answer is no.
The answer
that
is
was
no.
not a rhetorical question.
The thing is that this was like, 8 Marauders, then maybe, because, they'll actually last through those Colossus beams, but not going to be the case, and DNS still is mining at least somewhat, although a lot of his production has been cut. Doesn't matter, DNS takes the first game.
Well done, DNS, with some pretty good, I guess, aggression in the early stages of the game. It got a little bit funky there, but yeah, a really weird opening. uThermal reacting relatively well, but it seemed like DNS just got the better end after that, like this early series of trades eventually.
Yeah, it's one of those things that is hard to read into, because uThermal did hold, and you're like, well, that's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then you have your factory on a reactor building Hellions, which aren't very useful after basically the first 5 minutes. They're not killing probes, not doing very much else. So that's not more Marine production, and it's not Widowmine production. And then on that point, you have DNS, I think, actually consistently going for this, right? Where he's going for Colossus, but he's not actually in a hurry to go for Blink, because a lot of our Terrans, and especially uThermal, I think, don't go into Vikings that quickly. They kind of rely on these tank builds, right? Or these tank defenses. So if you go into charge, you take out the Marines of the Colossus, easy peasy, and then the charge lots don't really care about tanks a lot of the time, unless there's an incredible amount of them.
Yeah.
So that just felt like a composition that was going to work always so well for DNS, even without the whole weird kind of like drop in the main sacrifice of the army to the left side.
Yeah, absolutely. And you even saw that the SCV pulls and stuff that uThermal was trying to, it's really hard to make that work when there's both Colossus and the charge loss to buffer for everything there. So you end up seeing that uThermal had a very hard time holding. But that means that DNS taking the first game and puts himself in a very comfortable spot. I know that I was talking with you. I don't remember if you said this at any point. No, you said this on your stream when you were previewing stuff also. But you were expecting Lambo and uThermal to probably advance out of this group. But so far, we've already had Lambo lose the first series to Seoul. And now uThermal is down 0-1. You think he's going to be able to go the distance? You think uThermal comes back in this? What goes on?
So uThermal was the question mark for me, because his winter performance wasn't that wasn't that good either, and it was one of those situations where I was pretty sure Lambo was going to get first. Not the case anymore. And that uThermal was probably second, but then this is a good enough group that the other two guys can certainly take that second spot, because uThermal can be inconsistent. I still think Lambo makes it out, just because he's been in rough spots in groups before and still done the thing where he's like, I'm too experienced to lose here. But uThermal is the question mark, and unfortunately that game did not set itself up well for him.
Yeah, and to be clear, like, I'm actually with you very much on those predictions. I think that they were the case. Like, I think a lot of people, everyone would look at those groups and say, well, just in terms of general results across their career, like, it would be uThermal and Lambo. Seoul's been very iffy in the past. DNS has still kind of hit some ups and downs, even though he's been mostly on an upwards trend. Yeah. But DNS looking really solid. Can't wait to see what happens in this game. How did you feel about the Colossus stuff, though? Do you think just do it again?
Yeah, no, I think he will do the Colossus build again, but the circumstances will be very different. So, I mean, just from the get-go, we're not going to have like that forward gateway, even though it's possible in Cyber Forest, and uThermal might not do Hellions, considering that DNS wasn't just like being aggressive to him, right, and like trying to kind of take those power away. He was also already walling and preparing against a Hellion drop or Hellion attack.
Yeah, just want to note that probe is not taking the most direct pathway over, and timing this out around the time that I think if you throw down a pylon, it could, no, it's not going to be a proxy gate. It is moving way too far forward, but
yeah,
I was just thinking, might be something fun to mix in.
It is kind of weird that it took that curve.
Yeah, because the only thing I would be avoiding this early on is a SCV. Or maybe he was looking for proxies.
Yeah, exactly. I think he was looking for the proxy spot around the 3rd or 4th thing on the, usually the 4th, I guess. But so he gets here eventually, and we have uThermal sending out an SCV, which I really do like. I think after having even, again, like something that he held, but it had to mess up his build, and maybe he didn't even want to go into Hellions. He decided, I'm already making them, so I'm going to go with it. It messed him up a little bit. Go ahead and just SCV scout. I think actually there are just some Terrans in general that are, they're just going to say, okay, I'm always going to SCV scout Protoss, because despite that 3-second nerf on a depth, it's still really bothersome to deal with.
Yeah, especially on a map like Cyberforce, right, where it is very common. It's actually uncommon what DnS is doing right now, where he goes for the wall off in his main base rather than the low ground one. Because if you wall off that low ground area, that's also the Reaper hop-up spot. So you both get a proxy gateway that makes it easier for the Adept to move across the map, and you also block the Reaper from jumping up into the main or the natural. I mean, that's the dream right there.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Like, it's a little weird that he's not doing it, but the one downside of doing that wall, I'd say, is like the biggest downside is that if they do a tank push,
oh yeah,
and sometimes your production, like a 2-tank tank push pretty early on, it's annoying, but. Yeah. Stargate was scouted by the Reaper, so it's already done its job. If it dies, then so be it.
Yeah, and with 2 Adepts out, it probably should, especially with this nice wall over here. There's no way to move further south with that Reaper. Adepts pair up, snipe it off, and now we'll see that first Oracle on its way out. Now, with 2 Adepts already getting started with the, I guess, the opening here, that also probably is going to open up uThermal's mind to, okay, seeing a lot of these Protoss players going for those 3 Oracle, the big Adept pressure that a lot of Protoss players have been finding a ton of damage with in the earlier stages of the game. I wonder if he's going to be reacting to that at all, if that's going to be something he's worried about now.
It's very possible, but because he didn't have to worry about any early aggression, he could just go immediately to the tech lab and get a Cyclone, which you can take on if things are really badly situated, but should be good, especially a combination of the Viking. uThermal is well set up against any type of pressure with the Stargate. There you go.
Yep, gets a little bit of damage done on that Oracle, but it tags it with a Revelation, just a Cyclone, so we'll know the positioning of that. So the second Oracle can move in, maybe find another opportunity to get some damage done. Ooh, actually moves back in with this first Oracle.
You might regret that. Uh-oh. Viking's gonna chase it down.
Yeah, you might have to, he doesn't have enough shields to recall.
Yeah, he's gonna die.
Oh, that hurts. Because you see the 3rd Oracle on the way, and usually when the 3 Oracles pair up together, that's where the big damage will happen. You already see the Adepts and Stalkers. It's actually Stalkers reinforcing.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. So I think the Oracle dived back in, really wanting to see maybe the starport production, which unfortunately was a Viking that killed it. But then maybe he also saw that there wasn't a bunker on that natural and is like, okay, maybe I can do something. But I don't actually think there's an opportunity.
Also interesting that he uses his energy on the stasis trap.
Right.
Because if you're gonna go commit to a big attack, right, you want the energy for the Oracles for Revelations or even just for energy to attack with.
Yeah, and if there's 3 Oracles, you can certainly take out a tank, maybe even severely damage the second one, but he was down to 2 Oracles, and the Vikings were kind of looking for this, and then uThermal, smart as he is like, okay, are you pressuring? And then scans and sees that yes, he is. So, oh, he actually wanted to go meet that army. That's bold.
Yeah, I think he saw that the army wasn't looking that much bigger anymore,
It's
so
not.
Yeah.
It just, I would be scared that they're reinforcing, but.
Ooh, yeah. Okay, well, stasis traps, there's 2 of them further forward. He scans ahead and sees both of them.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
This is looking really dangerous now for DnS. And behind this, I want to also know, uThermal's been continuing to pump out more workers and stuff, so he's actually up at a relatively even worker count. If he gets any damage done whatsoever with this is a great spot now for uThermal.
This was a really great opportunity. This really turned around on DnS. First losing the Oracle, not able to do his attack maybe he was planning on, and then actually poking the bear. You know, uThermal was like, okay, I'll take this fight, no problem.
Okay, these Stalkers come in from behind, able to snipe up on the Siege Tanks, but he loses 4 of the 6 Stalkers there. He only has 2 up on the high ground. Make that 1 and make that 0. And suddenly now uThermal doesn't really have an army to worry about. It's 31 army supply versus 13, and about 8 of that army supply is still being warped in. They get taken out by Vikings. uThermal seems like he's going to be able to lock down this game.
Yeah, and it makes it look really easy, right?
Yeah.
But so much of that has to do, I think, with DnS losing that earlier Oracle, and then not being able to threaten any type of attack or any type of trade.
It was a committed thing.
He really was, depending on uThermal, to either be really shy, which is you don't want to guess that. uThermal's usually not shy. Or that he would run into one of those stasis traps. And that really does change the game a lot, because most of the army gets away if that happens.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a nice, cool attempt to say, like, okay, well, I don't think he's going to scan. I think he might send, like, a Marine ahead. And he had 2 stasis traps very close together, so he was hoping, okay, well, a Marine sets off one of them, and who would put 2 stasis traps right next to each other? But uThermal just scanned, so it didn't really matter, and that was putting a lot of the eggs in one basket there.
It was, yeah. I mean, all said and done, I can do that caster thing where I, like, cast Judgment, and I'm like, I don't like that attack that DnS does anyways.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where, like, if it was masterfully done, if everything went according to DnS's plan instead of uThermal, because uThermal basically responded to it perfectly, then it doesn't look nearly as silly. It doesn't look nearly as easy.
And the Stalker mix-up was what really kind of had me going, because I'm so used to seeing you see that same sort of 3 Oracle pressure. Obviously, it was going to be a 2 Oracle pressure since he lost one of the Oracles. But then following up with the Stalkers, I wonder if that was because he lost one of the Oracles and he didn't feel like the Adept Oracle attack would be a good thing to do, or if his original intention was, well, so many people are doing these Adept attacks, let me mix in Stalkers instead and jump on this army for like a Marine tank push that would move out?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he was thinking that he'd kite the army, which is difficult to do when they have the tanks actually alongside the Marines. And then I'll only threaten with the 2 or 3 adapts or whatever he had. Yeah. But he didn't even, I don't think he ever shaded.
He never actually moved in. Yeah, he never pushed.
Or if he did, they died too quickly.
Yes, yes.
But anyways, it looks really awkward. uThermal reading that perfectly, having his Vikings in great positioning, and not doing like another Hellion build is also, I guess, contributing to that. DnS tries a different strategy and really fails. But that happens. That happens in StarCraft. So
that's why these are best of 3s and not best of 1s, guys. So you have the opportunity to play around, to try some things out.
Yeah.
And then maybe decide to just go back to what worked.
Yeah, and as we're going on to Automaton, I do believe DnS will go back to the Colossus thing here. This is what he did last time I saw him. So getting in the game. Now, we can finally take a moment, I guess, a breather to talk about these 2 players in general. You kind of briefly touched on this, but that DnS is kind of that guy that like has some results and he's really trying to push it, but not able to have the consistent results that we attribute to uThermal. Right?
He's like that one step away. He's just half a step away from being considered one of the like top European players.
Oh.
But he's always just, oh, hello.
Hi.
Oh, I was like, oh, you really disagreeing with me? Okay. But I always feel like he's so close to be considered one of the top European players. But then it's just always like, well, he's just shy of it.
Oh. Yeah, most likely to do this anytime at all, actually. He sends an SCV out really early.
Okay.
Yeah. But while we have time, I guess, we still have to watch the barracks actually come up here. Yeah, DnS, especially since I would say a lot of the other typical strong showing Protoss are having a little bit of trouble, except Drogo, did well in winter. Like it is his kind of almost
non-Korean Protoss players, by the way.
There you go. There you go.
Non-Korean Protoss players.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. It could be his time to shine, but I say that about DnS. Like it seems like every group that I cast of them, and then also the same with Seoul. These 2 guys actually kind of coming in around the same like section for me. And so far, right, Seoul already upsetting by 2-0ing Lambo and DnS now 1-1. It's like this might be that group where they've both finally proved themselves.
Oh, that would be awesome. I'd be very, very happy about that. But okay, well, the Probe Scout's going to come in and realize that it is not just the proxy, but we do have the double refineries being thrown down. 3 workers on each one of those gas geysers immediately. So what does this turn out to be, Zombie? What are the kind of options here that DnS is going to have to worry about?
I mean, there's so many options. But no, seriously, like there are a lot of options for the proxy. uThermal, I mean, has even done occasionally like 2 racks Reaper against Protoss. I'm just throwing it out there, but that's not it.
Saw that with Ruff last week.
That's true. Yes, we did. Yeah. Well, no, did we? No, we didn't.
Oh, no, actually, no,
Yeah,
sorry,
that
you guys didn't. You didn't.
That was just his qualifier match.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, sorry, we saw the 11 base charge law DT all in from Estrella versus Ruff.
Yeah. Anyways, so the proxy racks, right, just with a single Reaper coming out earlier is always going to be bothersome. The Zealot really can't do very much, especially as it tries to take on the SEV, building a blocker in the natural. So maybe that was an opportunity to get a couple more probes. Gets 2, so be it. Well, in the main, I suppose. And then these keeps the Reaper alive, but the safest way to do this is the factory back at home. I mean, if you want to go, like, super hardcore, then you're going to proxy, like, every single building, right?
Yeah.
But the safest way is put it back at home, which the pylon scouts, even if the probe couldn't. And then we'll get into Cyclones is usually the safe option.
And the barracks on the Nexus! Oh.
See, that would have been really cool, but not possible.
Yeah. Oh, well.
And then into the starport, all in one base. It is something that DnS has to like strongly consider, right? He has to be a little worried about this. Just the amount of units you have as a Protoss this early is not that high.
Yep.
But it really was one of those less committed proxies, and I'm almost like a little surprised that uThermal didn't just like factory expand behind it, with how much it's not really doing here, and also that it is kind of being scouted again with that pylon, seeing what's coming out of the factory.
Yeah, that pylon's still there, by the way. It's finally going to get taken out by the Cyclone that pops out, but it is annoying that basically all the tech has been revealed this whole time, that he sees the tech lab and everything, so... DnS is going to have a pretty decent idea of what the immediate follow-up is, but does he know about the proxy starport? Or sorry, not proxy starport, but the starport with a Banshee.
The starport.
The starport.
Yeah.
The unproxied starport.
That's the thing, though, is that it's always the question of if it's a proxy factory, what comes out of the factory? If it's a proxy starport, what comes out of the starport? Or if it's just a regular starport, what exactly is going to come out of that? So, could be a Liberator for some harassment, could be a Medevac, and they're actually building Hellions, which he would have known, but
yeah.
But it could also be a Banshee, which I would say is one of the more common follow-ups. He kind of, maybe if he was really paying attention, got an idea of when the natural was thrown down to like really read in, to if the starport was thrown down before or after. But this is going to get the confirmation that he was otherwise missing. uThermal tries to deny it, does not get the opportunity, so that is going to be scouted. Robo is about halfway done. That is a little concerning.
Yeah, he also doesn't have... I mean, he has one pylon with a shield battery in his natural, but it's not really that close to the mineral line. It'll kind of cover versus some of the Banshee harassment, but there's not really a pylon in the main. And okay, he's throwing it up now, so if he really, really needs an emergency defense, he could go for a shield battery, but I think he has a little bit of time before that Banshee shows up, right?
Yeah.
A few seconds.
Yeah, literally a few seconds. So he's going to try and get it before Cloak is done, but this was actually like pretty well-timed Cloak. So that will get a couple of probe kills. That does put a damper on things for DnS as he's trying to crank on that Observer. He will potentially get this Banshee because Blink is almost done. It really dived deep for those probes. Nope. Observer can't catch up.
Yep. Walling in of that Nexus does prevent the Stalkers from catching up and doing the damage. We end up seeing the Banshee getting out of there alive. It can join up with its sister Banshee that's also making its way across the map. Continue to poke in and prod, make sure the DnS is staying on top of things. But Automaton, one of those maps where there's not, I mean, you do have a long way to make it over to the mineral line, so usually the Blink Stalkers should be able to catch them.
DnS going very quickly in a charge, by the way, so I guess he doesn't have... Despite that one hallucinated Phoenix isn't the best idea of what the follow-up plan could be for uThermal, so all he knows is that it was Banshee, which he dealt with okay, like only 4 probes, not that bad. And hopefully the 2 Banshees in combination don't do much more damage. They shouldn't, especially since that one Banshee would have lost its cloak anyways. As I say that, 5 pretty quickly there. Okay.
One Banshee goes down pretty quickly. The Stalkers are here with a second Observer, and oh my god, the Banshee survives. That is so annoying for DnS.
That is very annoying. Just in a spot that you really can't reach.
Yep, you're just going to leave it an Observer over there. It's not like that Banshee can recall or anything, but it might be able to sneak its way down over and scout the 3rd base at some point if he doesn't leave some Stalkers there and place the Stalker for. Oh, I was going to get it.
Nice. All right, so uThermal, I mean, in total, what, he got 11 probes from those Banshees?
Yeah,
so
not bad.
It's not bad. He bought some time so that maybe otherwise if he had gone for something else that was easier to deal with, he would have been under fire from Blink Stalkers because we are on Automaton, which doesn't have a ramp, and one tank can only do so much. But all things considered, he is seemingly well protected. As I say that, he lifts 2 medevacs. I'm surprised by this timing, not because Stalkers could be counterattacking, but because it is going to be just shy of Stim, I believe. Like, Stim has still a ways to go.
Yeah, the timing of this is also going to be kind of interesting because the Stalkers are so far out on the map right now, there's actually not a whole lot back at home. There is a Zealot, a Sentry, and an Immortal. And the Robo is also sitting idle. He's warping in maybe some more Zealots over here, which will have charge. I am wondering if DnS pokes too far forward with those Stalkers as the Marine does reveal the positioning of them. This gives an opportunity for these Marines to still get damage done, even without Stim.
Yeah, he had to wait a little while, but now in literally 5 seconds, they're going to have Stim. DnS going for that charge first, delaying his 3rd Nexus a little bit means that he has charge to help deal with this, and he just needs a couple more Warpings, I would think, as long as he dodges those Widow Mines to take care of this, but those are in a pesky little position.
3 gateways getting depowered over there. And remember, these Widow Mines are still available, but the Observer spots them out. Widow Mine gets a single Zealot. These Marines doing their best to try and micro and target fire down. An Immortal doesn't quite get it. The Zealot getting taken care of, and now he goes after the Immortal. Gets a Stalker, gets a 2nd Stalker.
Oh,
getting probed. This is becoming game-ending damage off the double drop.
Yeah, not being able to warp in more Zealots, and then 3 more might not have been enough either. Not having the Stalkers back at home.
And he gets out alive.
Really came together there. Yeah, that was nicely done from uThermal to get out 11 probes down on top of the Banshee damage, and again, making sure that those Stalkers aren't just like getting any counter damage done. They really didn't have the opportunity to, but yeah, they can't even stall out this push. So.
Oh, man. uThermal coming in, turning that game around in an instant with a double drop.
Yep.
I want to note that 3rd command center, not exactly super duper fast or anything behind that. He had to get something done with that attack, but didn't expect that much.
No, neither did I. I think that, well, even without that damage done, because keep in mind, he didn't just kill 11 probes. He killed a lot of army. That follow-up push is still going to be pretty nasty. But yeah, you lose that much army, then you're probably just better off tapping out right then and there. So it's too bad DnS is unable to get that upset, but I think that I actually would say that came down to him not being able to control the game, not being able to play the game that he wanted. 2nd game, he was the one that tried something different, didn't work, okay, so what? But then that 3rd game, just even being proxied as, again, like non-committal as uThermal did, does throw off your game plan. Yeah. So DnS obviously doing the best when he had that early aggression, when he took control of the game and was able to go into the Colossus in a fairly smooth macro game.
Absolutely. Well, well done by uThermal. He does manage to win that match. And while he's not done with his group, he does go on to the winner's match, where he's going to be moving into a good old decider to see whether or not he's going to be able to advance out of the group. But take a look to see what our next match is going to be. Before we go into that winner's match, we're going to go down to the lower bracket match, Lambo versus DnS. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Zombie Grub?
Not feeling it for DnS. I think Lambo is still going to come through here.
All right, well, we're going to find out in just a little bit with that PvZ coming up next here on WCS Challenger.